The first generation born with no country imagined being born and having no country to call your own, no flag, no passport, no government that says you belong here. Sounds impossible, right? But by the year 2175, this isn't a rare story. It's the reality for over 50 million people on planet Earth. They are not refugees. They are not criminals. They are not lost in some war zone. Many of them were simply born in the wrong place. A space station orbiting above us. A floating city in the middle of the ocean. A private corporate territory that answers to no flag and no president. And here's the question that keeps coming back again and again. If you were born outside every nation's law, who do you actually belong to? Stay with us, because this story might change the way you think about identity, belonging, and what it really means to be from somewhere. Before we go further, if stories like this make you think, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We bring you real, thought-provoking stories from the edge of our future every single week. Now, let's go back to where this all began. By the middle of the 22nd century, humanity had spread far beyond the borders we once knew. Space stations were no longer science fiction. They were homes. Floating ocean platforms built to escape rising seas and shrinking land became entire cities. And massive private corporations, richer than most governments, built their own territories with their own rules. People moved there for work, for survival, for opportunity. And then they had children. These children were born under the stars, or above the waves, or inside walls owned by a company logo instead of a national flag. And when their parents went to register their birth, they discovered something terrifying. There was no box to check, no country to write down, no system built for them at all. A baby born on a space station orbiting Earth does not automatically become a citizen of any nation. A child born on an ocean platform floating between international waters is, legally speaking, invisible. And a child raised inside a corporate territory belongs, in the eyes of the law, to absolutely no one but the company that owns the land beneath their feet. By 2175, this is no longer a rare exception. It's an entire generation, 50 million people, living, working, falling in love, raising families, completely outside any nation's legal protection. Doesn't that sound strange to you? In a world this advanced, with technology we once only dreamed of, the most basic human right, the right to belong somewhere, became one of the hardest things to guarantee. So world leaders finally tried to fix it. They proposed something historic, a treaty. They called it the Citizen of Earth Agreement. The idea was simple, and honestly, kind of beautiful. Instead of being a citizen of one country, every stateless person born outside national borders would automatically become a citizen of planet Earth itself. One shared identity, one global passport, equal rights no matter where you were born, in the sky, beneath the ocean, or on solid ground. It sounded like the perfect solution. A fresh start for 50 million people who had never had one. But here's where the story gets complicated. 40 nations refused to sign. 40 governments looked at this proposal and said no. Why would any country reject the idea of giving stateless people basic rights? The answers, it turns out, were not about kindness or cruelty. They were about power, money, and control. Some nations worried that an Earth citizenship would weaken their own borders and their own authority. If anyone, anywhere, could claim global citizenship, what would stop people from leaving their own struggling countries and demanding entry, using this new identity as a loophole? Other nations were influenced by the same corporations that owned those private territories. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Stateless people are easier to control. They cannot vote. They cannot easily protest. They cannot demand fair wages because no government stands behind them. For some corporations, an undocumented stateless workforce was not a problem to solve. It was a quiet advantage to protect. And so the treaty stalled. 40 nations walked away from the table, and 50 million people were left exactly where they started, stuck between worlds, belonging to none of them. But movements like this, they rarely stay quiet for long, and this one found its voice in the most unexpected place. Not in a courtroom, not in a government building, but in the face of a teenage girl. She was born on a space station, nearly 400 kilometers above the Earth. Her parents were engineers, sent there for work years before she existed. She had never set foot on solid ground until she was almost 16 years old. When she finally did come down to Earth, she discovered something she never expected. She couldn't enroll in a normal school. She couldn't open a bank account. She couldn't even get a basic medical record transferred, because legally, she didn't exist anywhere on paper. Imagine spending your entire childhood looking down at Earth through a window, dreaming about what it would feel like to walk on solid ground, to feel real soil beneath your feet, and then finally arriving, only to be told that the system has no place for you. She didn't stay silent about it. She started speaking, first to small online communities of other stateless families, then to wider audiences who could not believe what they were hearing. Her story spread, not because of dramatic speeches, but because of something simple and human. She kept asking one question that nobody could comfortably answer. If I was born under your sky, breathing your air, drinking water that came from your planet, how am I a citizen of nowhere? That single question became the heartbeat of an entire movement. People began calling her the voice of the stateless generation. Protests started, not with anger and chaos, but with quiet, determined gatherings. Families holding signs with the same words, "We exist." Suddenly, governments that had ignored this issue for years couldn't look away anymore. News networks picked up her story. Other stateless children began sharing their own experiences. A worker born on an ocean platform who had never owned a legal document in her life. A young man raised inside a corporate compound who only realized at the age of 20 that he had never been counted in any census, anywhere, ever. These weren't isolated stories anymore. They were one shared experience, repeated 50 million times over. The pressure on world leaders grew. Some nations that had refused to sign the treaty quietly reconsidered. Public opinion shifted. Younger generations on Earth, who grew up alongside news of space colonies and ocean cities, found it almost impossible to understand why basic identity should still depend on which patch of land or which station you happen to be born on. But change this big doesn't happen overnight. Even now, years after that girl first asked her question, the treaty remains incomplete. Some nations have signed, others still resist, and millions of people continue living in that strange, in-between space, present, but not officially recognized, real, but legally invisible. So here's the real question this story leaves us with. As humanity spreads further away from Earth, into orbit, beneath oceans, onto territories owned by corporations instead of countries, what truly defines where someone belongs? Is it the soil beneath your feet, the flag above your home? Or is it something deeper, your humanity itself, no matter where in this universe you happen to take your first breath? Maybe the future isn't about new flags for new frontiers. Maybe it's about realizing that some rights shouldn't depend on flags at all. If this story made you think, even just a little, that's exactly why we make these videos. So don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel, because we explore stories like this every week. Stories about the future, about identity, and about what it truly means to be human in a world that keeps changing faster than our laws can keep up. Because somewhere out there, right now, a child is being born with no country to call home. And the question is no longer will this happen? The question is, what are we going to do about it? Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next story.